You ever just sit there and think, what the hell is wrong with me? After all, you're doing the things, you're showing up, you've got food in the fridge and a roof over your head. Nothing technically is falling apart, but you feel disconnected, flat, unmotivated, or like you just might burst into tears in the cereal aisle, and you can't even explain why. Well, you're not crazy, you're not broken, but you might just be grieving, and not because someone died, but because something did. Now stick with me, because once you see this for what it really is, you'll stop blaming yourself for feeling off and finally understand why that ache hasn't gone away. And more importantly, you'll know what to do with it. So let's get going. You see, grief isn't just about death, it's about loss. And by the time we hit this stage of life, we've been quietly carrying so many of them. Things like job loss, loss of identity, roles, dreams, energy, safety, confidence, clarity. Maybe it's a version of motherhood you thought you'd have. The dream you had about a career that never fully happened. Or maybe it's the loss of being needed or being seen. Maybe it's your younger self, your body. Maybe it's the spark that used to come so easily. But here's the thing, because it didn't come with a funeral, because no one handed you flowers and said, I'm sorry for your loss, you never named it as grief. And so you blamed yourself instead. You see, this is how it shows up. Not as tears and tissues and long sobbing nights. No, grief is sneaky, especially when it's unspoken. It can show up as irritation, a short fuse, as forgetting what you walked into the room for, as needing wine every night just to relax, or scrolling for hours, not even sure what you're looking for. It looks like snapping at the people you love and then feeling like crap about it later. It looks like self-protection and the lack of ability to be loving and trusting in the next relationship. It looks like procrastination, like suddenly not being able to make the simplest decision because underneath you're grieving something that changed and you never had the time, space, tools, language to acknowledge it. You know, I remember a time in my life when on the outside, everything looked fine. I was doing what needed to be done, but inside I felt off, empty, like I was watching myself live instead of actually living. And it took me a long time to realise I was grieving, not a death, but those past losses that I tried desperately to brush off and bury inside of myself. Those miscarriages, friendships that ended, living far away from my family, the career dream that I let go of to take care of everyone else, the creative spark I'd buried under years of responsibility, the moments I missed with my kids when they were small and now they're grown and I blinked and I missed it. Why? Because I never gave myself permission to mourn any of that, because it wasn't dramatic, it wasn't tragic, it just hurt quietly in the background. And when you're a woman in midlife, you just keep pushing through because that's what most of us were taught to do. Now, part of the reason this kind of grief goes unseen is because we were never taught to recognize it for what it was. Sure, we may have felt it, but then we found ways to cope with it, which for many of us are probably unhealthy ways. You know, most of us were raised to be strong, get over it, to carry on, to shove it down and get things done. And when we were kids, maybe when we were cried, we were told, oh, you're fine. Or we were expected to be the good girl, the helper, and the achiever. So guess what? We never learned how to sit with loss. And now here we are, feeling heavy and confused, dragging around decades of unprocessed emotions and wondering why life feels like we're walking through mud. This is why, not because you're failing, but because you're feeling things you were never allowed to feel before. So here we are, midlife that's full of invisible grief and no one talks about it. Here's the truth. You grieve who you used to be. You grieve the feeling of being seen, desired and pursued. You grieve spontaneity. Remember when you could go somewhere without checking on your joints, your energy or the flipping weather forecast? You grieve the friendships that quietly faded, the version of your body that didn't ache when you slept wrong. You grieve how things used to feel easier. And you think, ye gads, is this who I am now? No, my friend, it's who you are when you've been carrying too much for too long without ever setting it down. So what can you do? Well, you start by telling the truth, not to anyone else, but just to yourself. You sit with yourself and you ask gently, what have I lost that I never gave myself the space to grieve? And whatever comes up, let it. You know, it might be big, it might be tiny, and it might feel silly, but it's not. That simple act of naming it without judgment, it softens something. It makes room for breath, and that's where healing begins. Not by fixing anything, but in allowing yourself to acknowledge and feel what's been buried and maybe even seek out help. You're not weak, you're not broken, you're becoming. You know, this stage of life is full of paradox. You can feel grateful and still feel sad. You can love your life and still long for parts of it that didn't happen. You can feel joy and loss at the same time. That's being human. And if you've been feeling like you've lost your spark, maybe you're not lost. Maybe you're just shedding old versions of yourself. Versions that were based on everyone else's needs and everyone else's timeline. This part of your life gets to become yours now. Grief included, healing included, and joy still to come. So if this touched something in you, let me know in the comments, what's one thing, big or small, that you've been carrying? Just name it. That's the first step. You deserve to feel light again, and I promise that light is still in you. It's just buried under the stories that you were never allowed to tell. And if this resonated with you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need it too, because we're not meant to carry this alone. And if you're ready to start gently untangling those hidden layers, I have a one-to-one program that can help and support you on this journey. And I have some free resources. I have a guided sleep meditation to help you finally rest, especially if your mind won't quieten down at night. My 4-week addiction journal is designed for women who realize that maybe that glass of wine isn't really about the wine, it's about the feelings underneath. I have an ebook, 61 tips on the experience of grief and how to move through it. They're all free and you can find it in the links in the description. You know, healing isn't about fixing yourself. It's about coming home to yourself. So from my heart to yours, I look forward to seeing you in the next video.